Today's guest is Marlene Johler, a person who has walked away from the world of investment banking, a world that's all about security and high stakes, and stepped into the uncertain, often overwhelming world of sustainability and circular economy.
But the truth is that sometimes a situation just no longer works for you. And when that happens, you need to make a change. And for me, it was investment banking, right? Where I was like, okay, I'm climbing a ladder, but the ladder is leaning against the wrong tree. And then how is that helpful, right? You just spend a lot of time being miserable and chasing the wrong thing. When you could make a move, maybe have some hard times in between, but then eventually find something that you really love. Isn't that a much better perspective?
Could you share a bit about your journey?
I always joke that I wanted to go save the world and I took a wrong turn and I ended up in investment banking. I realized it wasn't the right setting for me, but I had no idea what I actually wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to create impact. I just didn't really know how I would do that.
Today, she's shaping the future of business by changing the way we think about waste, sustainability, and how we create value in this world.
Certain risks are not insurable anymore. That means you cannot get insurance. If you, for example, look at winemakers in California, they can no longer insure their business against fires because fires have become so frequent that insurance companies say they will not insure it.
You mentioned one very powerful word that you've been suffering through your journey.
What I wanted to say really about shame is, shame is actually an emotion that isolates you. Shame happens when you're alone with it. And right now, even still, when I was failing miserably, I was scared. I didn't want to meet people anymore because I was like, well, what am I doing with my life? Like, I have potential and
Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of the Once Upon a Student, a place where we uncover the untold stories of extraordinary individuals. Today's guest is Marlene Johler, a person who has walked away from the world of investment banking, a world that's all about security and high stakes, and stepped into the uncertain, often overwhelming world of sustainability and circular economy. Now, that might sound like an obvious choice for us today in today's world, but the truth is this shift was not easy. And we're talking here about the kind of decision that most of us wouldn't even dare to do. To leave something that's a well-paying job, to build something from scratch in a field that wasn't yet on everyone's radar. Today, she's shaping the future of business by changing the way we think about waste, sustainability, and how we create value in this world. If you ever questioned your own path, wonder whether your ambitions are worth pursuing, or thought that the leap to something meaningful might be too big, Marlene's story will have an impact on you. Welcome here.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for accepting the invitation. It's a real pleasure to have you here as my guest, as in my opinion you had an incredible career so far, and I really admire the bravery you took throughout your whole career, pursuing your goals, your dreams. And tell me please, why did this topic become so important to you?
Well, as you said, I've completed quite a journey to get here, and as you said in the beginning, I went into investment banking after my master's degree because I am very ambitious, and I felt that investment banking is traditionally considered a successful career, right? This is and that really catered to my ambition. And in the beginning, I really liked being in investment banking. I liked that it was a bit cutting edge. I kind of liked the long working hours because the learning curve was so high. It was exciting. It sometimes felt like we were playing chess doing transactions. And so it was great. The problem was just that in the low phases, when it was less intense in terms of working hours, I got to reflect. And that's when I always had the same questions popping up, right? I was like, what am I doing here? Is this really what I'm supposed to do? Like, do I belong here? Because I don't feel like I fit into this setting. And and also, honestly speaking, I wasn't really interested in banking. That's also what I realized. I loved the learning curve. I loved the setting. I had a lot of fun. But, at some point I was like, this is not who I am. This is not who I want to become. And that's why I had to make a change. And that was hard. But in the end, after multiple different steps, I did find the circular economy. And, to be fair, the whole journey was hard. And for most of the time, I did not feel very successful on my journey. I just felt like I was suffering and just trying to push on and to finally, hopefully, find what I wanted to get to. But yeah, then I found the circular economy, and it actually hit me the first time I read about it. I was like, I read it and I was like, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. This just makes so much sense. And this is also, I think, why it resonated so much with me, because the concept just makes so much sense. And it's also something that it's very complex. So you will learn forever, because there is always something new to discover. And that's also something that I love about the circular economy, the complexities, the learning curve that you have. And it's obviously, of course, also about creating positive impact, because the circular economy addresses a lot of current topics that we have about limited resources, climate change, but also thinking about how can we create an economy that is just and provides opportunity for everyone.
You mentioned one very powerful word, that you've been suffering through your journey. This is a very powerful emotion. How did you find the courage to leave your safe investment world and find the courage to, this is super interesting and now I want to pursue it?
Well, it wasn't that I was in investment banking and then I read about the circular economy and then I just took a leap, right? It was more that I was in investment banking. I realized it wasn't the right setting for me, but I had no idea what I actually wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to create impact. I just didn't really know how I would do that. And the truth is, if you don't know what you want to do, you have to, start your journey and figure out what it is. And traditionally, you don't figure out what it is that you want to do by sitting at home and waiting for something to come your way. That's not how it happens. You have to be proactive, so you have to take another step. For me, it was, not as straightforward as I had hoped for. Basically, I was in investment banking. I then moved into the venture capital space. Why? Because I was running a food blog next to being in M&A.
Wow.
Yes, because, investment banking isn't exactly very creative. And for me, I just, I just felt like I needed something that is creative, that is a bit more colorful. And I love food, like the textures, the flavors, thinking about how you can put that together. So I had the food blog and I was very passionate about food. So coming from banking, something that would make sense is then go to an F&B VC. And what I initially wanted to do is just get a hold or understand better how F&B works, and then found my own F&B company. But that didn't really happen the way I had envisaged it, to be honest, because then my partner at the time got offered a job in Singapore. I had been wanting to move abroad again because I think we haven't talked about that, but I've now lived in 4 different continents in 8 countries. So I love being abroad because it's just exciting, but you learn so much by putting yourself in different contexts, right? Like it just contributes to learning curve. And for me, I just want to understand how the world works. And if you go somewhere else and you try to understand how life is in another place, it adds more information. So you can understand a little bit better how the world works.
You get way more wiser by interacting with other cultures and
Yes.
also learning from them. I get that, yeah. And I'm also, I love cooking. I also love it because it's, you can turn off your brain basically during that. You just enjoy yourself and it's super creative. So I totally get that. And now we're at the circular economy topic. For many of our listeners, this may be a super unfamiliar topic, or they have only got information that is super unspecific. So can you break down what it really means and why this topic is actually so crucial for businesses, but also for our environment?
Yes, I'm very happy to do that. So basically, the circular economy is an alternative economic concept to the linear economy as we see it today. So the linear economy is basically a model where we take limited resources, we make a product out of that we use for a very short amount of time, and that we then throw away. I think the problem with that is quite obvious, right? We create a lot of emissions and we create a lot of waste, and our limited resources are then lying around somewhere in a garbage dump. And that's bad because resources are really limited. Also, if we think about climate change right now, I think there are not a lot of people who will still say climate change doesn't exist, because if you look into the news, you will see headlines every single day about another natural catastrophe. Droughts, fires, floods, storms, hurricanes, whatever. News are full with that. And the problem is that our infrastructure is not built for that. So that means we have a lot of damage, and somebody will have to pay for that. And already we see today that certain risks are not insurable anymore. That means you cannot get insurance. If you, for example, look at winemakers in California, they can no longer insure their business against fires, because fires have become so frequent that insurance companies say they will not insure it. So who will pay for that? In the end, sooner or later, it will be all of us. And the circular economy actually offers a solution to all of these problems. How? So we have basically 4 principles that are key. First of all, we want to eliminate waste through design. How do we actually do that? Well, the fact is that 80% of the sustainability of a product is actually determined at a design stage.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that means if you do the design wrong, there is no way you can compensate for that later on. So in the end, we have to change how we design our products. We have to think about how can we use recyclable, recycled, or natural resources to put into our products. How can we make sure that they are long-lasting, that you can repair them, that they're modular? So it's really about figuring out how to get the design right, and to make sure that at the end of the life cycle of a product, you can put it back into the loop. The second point is keep materials and products in the loop for as long as possible. The circular economy offers various strategies on how to accomplish that. As I said already, repair, reuse, sharing, etc., etc. The third principle is that we need to decouple growth from resource consumption. Right now, we need 1.8% more resources for every 1% additional GDP growth. Now, resources are limited. I think we can agree on that. So the problem is it will not work out anymore, right? And last but not least, it's really also about regenerating natural systems. So that means a transition to renewable energy, but also regenerating the biosphere that we have all around us.
So you basically also have to change the operating system, how our world works.
Yes, I think we need to rethink how we want to do things, and I think it's also really about being creative. What creative solutions can we find? I think it's also about rethinking our own consumption. Do we need a 15th pair of jeans? Do we need, I don't know, whatever, like fill in the blank, any item? Because most likely we don't, right? So I think the way for people to also have an impact, or the easiest way to have an impact, is ask yourself, do you actually need to buy this? Because if you don't, please don't.
You've brought up a very important topic is also about taking over responsibility, because we as people tend to always blame the governments, we blame the companies that are producing the goods, that they are the bad, evil people who are polluting our world. But in the end, we are buying the products.
Yes. Okay. And so I think I have 2 points to make here, because sometimes this is a good excuse that is also used by corporates, being like, okay, we pollute the environment to produce products because our consumers want that. I think that's not good enough. This is not good enough a line of argumentation, because the truth is also, if only sustainable products were produced, the consumer would buy that because that's the only thing that is available to a certain extent, right? At the same time, why are toxic products produced right now? It's because it's cheap, right? It's because you don't have to pay for the pollution that you cause to the environment. It's something that basically we all pay for without knowing it. And I think this is also where it gets a bit difficult, right? Because if you ask people in the street, do they want to pay more for the products? The answer will be no. So it's tricky, but as I said, if you think about if you really need that and don't buy it, you actually save money. So, it helps a bit. It helps a bit with that. But in the end, it's also about what we believe as a society, because we're still very much in a place where identification comes through the things that you own. Do you own a small car? Do you own a big car? Do you have a small apartment? Do you live in a big house? So the awareness, and you see that the awareness for this is changing. But changing what we believe as societies, it takes 30 years. So it's a very, very long process, and the challenge that we have right now is that we don't have 30 years. We need to be fast.
I have the feeling, you have way more expertise in this field than I do, that you're doing steps backwards right now. Is it true?
You mean because of all of the regulation that has just been published and somebody across the Atlantic basically going back on
fossil fuels and going back away from the treaties that we have signed one day.
Okay, so in the EU, I don't think we're going back. Yes, we've now reduced a little bit the amount of reporting that needs to be done. Honestly speaking, that makes sense, because also for me, I now do work in a corporate, I don't have the resources to actually implement sustainability projects because I'm so busy filling out questionnaires, and that doesn't make a lot of sense, right? The goals that we have in the EU, which is the climate neutrality, etc., are still in place. And if you look at companies, they still invest in sustainability. You also still see that in the market, customers are asking for sustainability. So, I think the train has left the station for sustainability, and it is still going in the right direction. I don't think that the train is going to turn around now. Is it a bit complicated or more complicated with what's going on at the other side of the Atlantic? Yes, and it's obviously not ideal because a lot of emissions are caused there. But in the end, sustainability it's of course about reducing emissions, but in the end, it should also be a business case, right? It should be a driver for innovation, for positive change, to foster competitiveness in companies. And this is something that is very often forgotten. And it's a misconception, really. You shouldn't just do sustainability for reporting. You should do it because you see that it offers opportunity and that it also helps you become competitive in the long run.
It's an amazing perspective.
Well, it's starting to be there. But yes, I think this is also something that is happening more and more, and you see it in various industries that a lot is happening. And especially in Europe, we should not be ashamed of all of the sustainable initiatives that the companies are doing, because I see a lot, really.
We often underestimate actually the power the European Union still has. I think we saw it with the regulations about the USPC charters. For example, Apple was actually forced into remaking the product, also designing the products new, that people don't have to buy another charger, especially for iPhone, especially for Samsung, for example. So the EU still has power over their still big, huge corporations.
I wouldn't say Europe still has power. I mean, Europe is one of the largest consumer markets in the world. We have 600 million people with high purchasing power. The Americans are 330 million. So it feels more that the European Union doesn't have the confidence that I would want to see, to go out there and be like, hey, we are an economic powerhouse, because we are. I think so. We can be a bit more confident. Now we have maybe missed the whole military defense thing in the past 60 years because we relied on our partners. But you see now that also things are changing on that front. But as I said, the EU is an economic powerhouse, and I do expect to see changes on the global world policy stage over the past months.
And I think the EU is getting back their confidence lately. I hope.
They have to. They absolutely have to.
And what's one misconception that people tend to have about sustainability and circular economy?
One misconception I've already mentioned before is that you should only do it because you have to fulfill regulations. The other one, when it comes to circular economy, is that it's going to be easy. It's not. It's hard and it's very complex. It takes resources. It takes collaboration in all levels of the organization, because circular economy in the end means that you are doing a huge change project. So you have to change incentives. Oftentimes, or most of the time, if you really want to fully implement the circular economy, we're talking about business model change. So you have to change how you do business. And that is risky, and that is hard, and it takes a lot of courage and perseverance to do that.
Do you think the companies that take the courage to take the leap forward will benefit in the future?
Yes, I think so, because in the end, as I said, resources are a problem, right? Like supply chains. And this is also, now that we've talked about politics for a bit, I mean, this is also why the EU wanted to become circular or be leading in circular economy, because we don't have resources here. So we are dependent on China, etc., to get the resources that we need. So making sure that the resources that come into the EU actually stay here makes a lot of geostrategic sense.
Oh, that's actually, I've never thought about it, but yeah, this makes totally sense.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
So in the long term, it's actually very profitable also strategy for the whole European Union, if we can get it done.
If we can get it done, it's also the circular economy. We talked about responsibility earlier, right? And about the responsibility of the consumer. But I think it's also very much about putting the right political framework into place. Because without the right policies, it's going to be very, very difficult.
I agree. And you mentioned that your journey wasn't quite linear. And you had a lot of twists and turns during your career. Could you share a bit about your journey?
Yes, of course. I've teased quite a bit already. So basically, we had investment banking first, where I realized that it just wasn't for me.
But have you always wanted to go to investment banking?
No. I that kind of came to me, I would say. Initially, I wanted to go. And work for the World Bank, and basically save the world. That was the plan. Now we can discuss whether the World Bank would be saving the world. I did write my bachelor thesis about the World Bank as an instrument of US foreign policy. So it is a political institution, but still, that was kind of the vision, right? But then I came back to Vienna after my master's in Barcelona, and I got offered an internship position in investment banking. And I just stayed there. I always joke that I wanted to go save the world, and I took a wrong turn, and I ended up in investment banking. And it sounds really funny, but to be fair to investment banking, as I said, you have a very high learning curve, but also it teaches you to a certain extent how the world works as well, right? Because they say money makes the world go round, and that's just how it is. So understanding that better makes a lot of sense. The truth is also that if you have a lot of money, you can create massive impact. I mean, the biggest example is probably the Gates Foundation, but also the owner of the firm I worked for made huge amount of contributions to, for example, schooling in Africa, etc., etc. So if you have money, it's, you know, you can choose the projects where you can make an impact, and that is really, really cool. Nevertheless, besides all of the contributions to South Africa, I just felt like a fraud. I felt like this was the wrong setting. So then moving to venture capital, and then to Singapore, where I did fundraising for startups. And you know, I liked it, but I still had so many ideas of what I wanted to do. And so in the end, I founded my own company in Singapore. I did financial consulting to basically support myself. But it was also a way for me to test out ideas. You know, so we launched a supplements brand. We grew Instagram accounts to thousands of followers with personal development or personal growth topics. I looked into coaching, and it was all, you know, I liked it. As I said, I liked it, but I was like, still not it. So yeah, and then one day, circular economy came along. And that's when I was like, okay, finally found it. The funny thing was, though, so I read through the concept. I was really enthusiastic. Then I slept on it, and the next day, it was like I woke up from a really bad hangover, because, you know, the circular economy, it's very complex, right? It gets very technical really quickly, and it's firmly rooted in the industry. And I was like, I'm a banker. I really don't know how I fit there. Now, I found the topic, but how? There isn't really a connection point. Like, how frustrating is that?
Yeah, I believe.
But in the end, I was lucky to have a partner at the time who was very good at, you know, bringing clarity into chaos. So he actually helped me figure out, you know, what a path forward would be. And in the end, you know, I accumulated all of the knowledge and papers and whatnot about the circular economy. I got certified. I started building workshops, intro workshops, because in the end, the circular economy in Singapore was not a thing, right? Nobody even knew what it was supposed to be. So that means you need to start with creating awareness for the topic. And that's why I started designing the workshops. I also found myself some organizations that were already active in the space. So we then tested the workshops together and then went out into the market. But it was really hard because, as I said, it wasn't a thing, and it was still the pandemic. Yeah. The interesting thing for me was also, you know, I was very focused during my journey that I just have to find the thing, right? And if I find the thing, then that's it. Goal accomplished. But the funny thing with life is that it never ends. So you find something and then you're like, okay, and now what? Like, what is the next move? So it doesn't stop. So you have to continue finding new goals and continue the journey, because just finding what you were looking for doesn't really help you. So yeah. At some point, we came back to Austria. It was still the pandemic in Austria. I found out that there was a Circular Economy Forum Austria. So I contacted them, eventually joined them as an advisor for circular business model innovation. I got teaching roles at university. And then it really started with speaking engagements, so keynotes, panels, etc., to, you know, bring more knowledge about the topic into to business and also to society.
Do you still remember your first keynote?
Yes, I do. It was in as part of the Impact Days, actually. And like right now when I do a keynote, I like to say I think I'm quite good at it by now. Mm-hmm. But you also see the learning journey that I've had in the meantime. The first keynote I held was about why circular economy is much more than recycling. I remember it was in the morning. It was basically the very first item on the agenda of the event. Mm-hmm. So there weren't a lot of people in the room. I was obviously super nervous because it was the first time I had ever held a proper keynote on a proper stage with like proper audience. And I think it went well, considering everything. But the thing I remember most is that I had one moment where I forgot the text. And I was silent for like, I think it wasn't long. It was probably like 2 seconds. But when you're standing on stage,
felt like eternity.
It felt like eternity. I was like, okay.
And how did you get back into the loop?
To find text again?
Yeah.
Well, at some point it just came back.
Okay.
So I was like, I mean, if it's a topic that you know very well, it's actually fine, right? At some point the text will come back because you know what you're talking about. So far so good.
I think this is also a great advice we can give away to our people is if you want to give good presentations, just be confident about the topic you're talking about. Because if you just learn your speech in your mind, it probably won't work as well because once you lose the traction during that conversation or during that keynote, it will be difficult to come back.
Yes, but it's also something else. I think it's also practice. Mm-hmm. Like even today, when I do a keynote that I've done 20 times, I will prep beforehand. I will stand in front of a mirror or walk around the room and do the whole keynote. I never go unprepared. Perfect. Why? Because even if it's something that you're very comfortable with, there is a noticeable difference in the delivery that you have. Because you're just more confident because you've just said it already, right? So I mean, I think everything that you do, preparation is key. That's just how it is.
I agree. If you come prepared to a meeting and to work, you will always have a better image of yourself for the other people.
Yes.
And so you moved from the world of investment banking to create something that could change our world, how we function it, how companies work, how we as consumers consume products. But I imagine there was also a moment where you felt, hey, this won't be possible. Like, for example, described already, there was quite a chaos. There was excitement about this circular economy. Can you tell us about it, how you actually overcome that chaos and what helped you to build a structure in that and to go from, I have an exciting idea, this is something that sounds like my purpose, how do I act on it?
Look, I think the truth is, to a certain extent, you have to experiment, right? I mean, if you do something, you get a feedback. Mm-hmm. And then feedback may be that what you're doing, nobody needs that. And if that's the case, then you need to think about how else you can do it or what else you could do, right? I mean, for me, as I said, I had the partner at the time who helped me structure it. That was really helpful. Like, I would really recommend having the right people in your life. I think this is really a key for success. Like, have people around you that add, value, that make you more than you are by yourself. People who provide advice, who, when you're struggling, who will be there holding your hand for a bit, so it will be okay. People who are kind and it's really, I think, life and the quality of the life that you live is so different when you make sure that you have amazing people in your life. It makes all the difference. And so this is really, no matter if you want to build a business or if you are just slightly dissatisfied with the life as it is, or I think make sure that you have the right people in your life. And if you're asking now, what is the definition of the right people? I think your body actually is very good at giving you indications of what is right and what is wrong. If you go and meet someone and you walk away from the meeting feeling excited, with little stars in your eyes and being inspired, well, this is an indication that this is a good person for you. If you walk away and you're like, ugh, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, this was just tough, well, you may want to limit your exposure to that person because it obviously doesn't do you much good.
Yeah. I think founding a business or starting a professional career is already so stressful sometimes and emotionally overwhelming that having people around you that actually care about you makes a huge difference.
Yes.
I think this topic is also a bit under-talked in business, in founding businesses, because those people that are not in the spotlight are sometimes the most important factor for someone's success or learning.
I like that, the framing of learning. Yes, I agree.
And what are some key elements of the circular economy models that I think every company and also every person should understand?
I think the most important thing is about understanding the concept in general, right? Like, what do we actually want to accomplish? Understanding that we need a mindset shift, that it's really moving away from how we do business today to how can we do business in the future. And obviously, circular economy is not going to be completely implemented tomorrow. I think even if you're a company that is very committed to sustainability and to circular economy, it will be a 10-year transition process. So we're talking about very long time horizons. But that's okay, right? It's something, it just means that we have to go on and start the journey to start implementing. It also, I've said before that circular economy means a business model change, right? Yeah. It doesn't mean that tomorrow you have to start with business model change. Maybe start with the easy stuff. Start in your own operations. Think about, how can I reduce my waste streams? Could I be a bit creative, and instead of making it a waste stream, I could resell it because it's a resource for somebody else? Could I resource my energy consumption? Could I use green electricity instead? Could I somehow reduce the amount of materials that I use? There are a lot of smaller interventions that you can start with. So start there.
What are some super simple tasks we as consumers can actually do to help our economy?
I think and I think I've touched on this before. Think about if you really need to buy this. And, oftentimes you might realize that for example, a drill is something that, how often do you need it? Like, for me, maybe once every 3 years when I move and I need to hang up pictures again. So if it's an item that you only need every 3 years, you could just rent it. You could also think about things like buying used things instead of buying them new. Willhaben, for example, is an excellent example of how to do that. And I think it's really just about being a bit more mindful and being aware that your choice matters. It's easy to be in this big world and be like, well, what I do doesn't have an impact anyway. But the truth is, if we all think that way, well, we're not going to go anywhere. So we are all responsible, and we need to be aware that we are all responsible with every single choice that we make every day. Now, you don't have to fall into a depression because of that, but just be mindful of that.
That's amazing. And let's dive more into personal topics. If you would describe your personality, how would you describe it in 3 words?
My personality?
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm very easy to excite. I'm very energetic, and also I'm a very warm person, and courageous. Courage doesn't mean that I'm never scared. I assure you, I am, but the question is, what do you do with that? Do you then not do it, or do you jump? And I tend to be the person who is like, okay, I'm jumping.
So you go where the fear is. You go where the fear is.
Yeah. Because, you know, I think this is also where growth happens, right? Like if you're just scared, you can't just stay in that space. You need to make a move.
I think it's super important that we talk about it, because I had once a conversation with a friend of mine, and his girlfriend asked him if he's ever scared to talk in front of the public, holding presentations. And he said, no, he's not scared. And you saw the discouragement that's happening on that person's face, because she was like, oh, he's not scared, so he just has it happen naturally. But I asked him, are you never nervous when you go out on stage? He said, yeah, I'm super nervous, but I'm not scared. And I think we have to reframe the whole concept about fear. All those successful peoples, they are still nervous when doing this.
And shame. I think shame is actually a really important thing, because as I told you, most of the time I did not feel successful. Even if you ask me today, would I consider myself very successful? No, not really.
Why?
I don't know, because there are other people who've accomplished much more, I guess. But what I wanted to say really about shame is, shame is actually an emotion that isolates you. Shame happens when you're alone with it. And right now, even still, when I was failing miserably, I was scared. I didn't want to meet people anymore, because I was like, well, what am I doing with my life? Like, I have potential. And so I just felt ashamed of how my life was going, and it's dangerous, because, as I said, shame happens and it isolates you, and we should not be scared of failing, and we should not feel ashamed about that. By the way, by now I don't feel shame anymore. I'm very proud of who I have become. And I also will not let other people make me feel ashamed for my journey or who I am and where I'm going, because, I own that. And I think owning your story, also to close the loop up here, owning your story is really, really important. Yes, you failed a couple of times, many times maybe, but it doesn't matter, because you came out on the other side and you've learned so much. So how is that a shameful experience? It's not, right? You've grown, and it means that now you are a better person, and most likely will not make hopefully not make the mistakes again, and that's actually fantastic.
Imagine life where there wouldn't be any downside. If every story was perfect, it would be boring.
I think there would not be any happiness, because happiness, to a certain extent, lives off the fact that you have variation, right? So I think you should maybe try to not have like these amplitudes, but like.
But as an entrepreneur, it's very likely that you will go into this roller coaster.
Agreed. But in the end, yes, sometimes you will struggle a bit more. Sometimes you will feel a high, which is also amazing, and. By the way, when you have this high phase, don't be scared that it will end. I mean, it will end, but because it will end anyway, you might as well enjoy it while it lasts.
It's amazing perspective. It's quite contradictory to what I was always talking about, because I remember my first pitch I ever done, and it was at the Entrepreneurship Avenue, and there was one mentor. He was the US ambassador back at the time. And he told us, as an entrepreneur, you will have such highs, but also such lows. And what's important is that when you have a super high lovey-dovey feeling within your gut, stay calm, because this will end. And on the other side, if you have a really low in your company or personal life, you can still react the same. Hey, this will also go away, so that you become more stoic as well during the journey. But yours is, I think...
I'm not a very stoic person. No, I don't do that. I mean, especially the highs, I don't want to regulate them down. For the lows, yes, of course, you may want to, basically put it in a bit of perspective and be like, okay, this is hard right now. The beauty of hardship, by the way, there is also something good about that, right? Like whenever you're struggling, what does it mean? It means you're learning because you are struggling. So for me, I had a very, very long, very, very high phase last year where I was like so happy as never before. And I was like, I feel like I'm Icarus flying too close to the sun and I'm gonna fall out of the sky very soon. But it was also, I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm not learning at the speed that I would love to learn right now because I'm just so chilling, happy, easy.
So you also thrive on difficult moments.
I think we all do, don't you think? I mean, if you manage to come out on the other side, but usually we do.
Yeah.
If you're struggling and you realize you cannot solve it on your own, I mean, then you need to go get help. It's very simple. And also here, no shame should be attached to that.
Yeah, I agree. And what advice would you give students if they would like to start a career focused on creating social and environmental impact?
Okay, so I think you should start with finding your why. Like, why do you actually want it? And also find out what is your goal? Like, what do you want to accomplish with that? Understand a bit, what are your core values? Understand a bit the kind of lifestyle also that you want. For example, is it super important for you to have a very good salary? Are you okay if it's not that? But just find out the environment that you need for yourself. What is the minimum that you need so you can be happy? Mm-hmm. Because if you don't know that, you may be, I don't know, for example, if you're hyper ambitious and you want to earn a huge salary and you start working for an NGO, this might not be a fit. So think about the environment, the goal. Why do you want that? What exactly do you want? What do you expect to get out of that? And if you're someone who just knows, I want to do something in the environmental or social space, congratulations, but that means you need a bit more direction, right? Mm-hmm. Because that is very broad right now. You could go do sustainability in a corporate, you could go to an NGO, do development aid in Africa. Like this is very big as a topic. So if you have no idea where to start, I would encourage you to start testing it out. How do you do that? There are possibilities for internships. You could do volunteering. That doesn't need to be in Africa. You could also, help out at the local soup kitchen. There are so many projects that you can work with, and then just see how it resonates with you. Again, I'm somebody who's very feeling. So how do you feel about that? How does it make you feel? Do you enjoy it? Do you also enjoy the people that you are in contact with? Again, people, make all of the difference. And I think also even in work, if you work with people you don't really resonate with, you don't really vibe with, it has an impact on the quality of your life, because we spend a lot of life in work.
Spend actually most of our life at work.
Exactly. And this is also what I find so fascinating, that you have people who complain about work for years and they don't make a move. And it's mind-boggling. Like, I do not understand this at all, because the only truly limited resource that we have is time. So the time is literally the most valuable thing that we have. So why would you spend it being miserable? It doesn't make any sense. So if you don't like where you are, move. You're not a tree. And there you go. And of course, I understand that sometimes you're not ready to let go immediately. But then, just set yourself a time frame. Maybe say, okay, in 4 months, if I still feel the same about this, I then commit to making a move. In the meantime, you could also try different intervention and see if you could make this your current situation work for you. But I think at some point, you have to know when to quit as well. And I know quitting in the context of the entrepreneurial journey is not the most popular thing to talk about. But the truth is that sometimes a situation just no longer works for you. And when that happens, you need to make a change. And for me, it was investment banking, right? Where I was like, okay, I'm climbing a ladder, but the ladder is leaning against the wrong tree. And then how is that helpful, right? You just spend a lot of time being miserable and chasing the wrong thing. When you could make a move, maybe have some hard times in between, but then eventually find something that you really love. Isn't that a much better perspective?
Totally. And I heard your metaphor already during one of your speeches, leaning your ladder against the wrong tree. And imagine there are a lot of people who haven't found their tree yet, but they have also didn't put a ladder to any tree of them yet. And let's say they have many trees that they think they look amazing. What would help them to actually make a decision what is the right tree or the right career for them?
I would love to tell you that I have like a little sheet where you just tick some boxes and then the perfect career for you will fall out. I don't have that. And I would also love to tell you that there is a better way than trial and error, but to a certain extent you will have to test it out. I think I said this earlier already. If you have clarity on what your goal is, if you know where you actually want to go in the long term, and if you know what your values are, that gives you a lot of guidance. If you know how you want to feel in your work environment, it gives you guidance, because then you can already see things that will not fit from the beginning, and you can cross that out.
So I think the most important part in business is actually to get to understand yourself better.
Yes.
Who am I?
Yes. And I mean, for me, it's kind of funny, right? Because now I ended up in the industry. And if you had told me 2 years ago I would be working in the aluminium industry in the middle of Upper Austria, I would have told you that you're obviously insane. But here I am. And it's actually still surprising to me what a fantastic match this is. But yeah, I mean, I absolutely love what I do. I love the people I do it with. I have a lot of freedom to actually create impact. I still teach. I still hold keynotes, which is also something that I love to do. So I just found the perfect setting for me. And you have no idea how happy that makes me. Like, really.
You look very happy.
I am very, very happy. It doesn't mean that I never get frustrated. Of course I do. And, when I get frustrated, I get really, really frustrated. Moving back to if you don't like where you are, move, you're not a tree. It doesn't mean you need to move always when you get a little bit frustrated. Sometimes you need to just push through that.
Try at least a few steps on the ladder.
Yeah, exactly. Hold on a bit longer. It's just the moving part is more related to when you haven't seen any change in a really long time. But frustration, I think, is normal. It's part of the process. Again, the pain means that you're growing and you're developing. And as I said, I get a bit antsy when it's too easy for too long.
Yeah, there's the imposter syndrome kicking in. I want to learn more. No, but there is also a beautiful saying, I think, in the Japanese culture. It's correlated to the movement of Kintsugi. I don't know if you ever heard about it.
No.
But in Japan, when something breaks, they put it back together, but not that it's not visible, but every part that was broken, they golden it. Because for them, every broken piece is a part of your journey and it's beautiful. So scars,
I love that.
Scars make you beautiful. Difficult lives is mostly guaranteed for every one of us, because all of us will have to deal with losses, heartbreaks, failures. And the Japanese culture is like, they even talk about our westernized approach to being happy, something like it's a disease, because you shouldn't strive to be happy. It's amazing when you are, it's perfect, but you should strive to be strong, gaining experience in life, and really accepting that life won't be easy.
I have some thoughts about that.
Sure.
Because there is this, I don't know if you've seen it, there is this graduation speech from Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yes, and it just reminded me of that, because he also says, don't try to be happy, because happiness is the result of is the result of something you have accomplished, like a result, right? And that means you will be unhappy most of the time, because you cannot, accomplish like big things every 2 weeks. What he says there is that it's more about finding joy in the process of what you are doing, because then you will have, because joy you can have constantly about just the things that you do. And I found this to be a very good guidance, because that also means that you can also in your job, right, figure out what gives you joy and then do a bit more of that. And for me, I mean, obviously I do so many things that I really love, that I have a constant stream of joy coming my way. Now we're doing interactive sustainability workshops for the whole workforce in our different plants, and I would love to do every single workshop myself, because I love the doing the workshops. Unfortunately, this would really be a bit too much, but it's really about integrating joy in your life, and for me, oftentimes a lot of the things that I have to do for work, they don't feel like work at all. I'm like, the other day I'm very much into politics as well. And the other day I was out for coffee to discuss international politics for 1.5 hours. And I was like, I cannot believe I get paid for that. Like, this is amazing. Yeah.
So if you would ask your 10-year-old self if she's proud of you, she would say yes.
I hope so. I've never thought of my 10-year-old self, to be honest. No, but I think, look, I mean, I was lucky, because after all of the difficulty, and I mean, in between, it was like, I was really like, wow, how did I go so wrong in my life? It's wonderful to get to a place where you are really happy. And I mean, for me, I really like who I've become. And that is also a gift, just being content with who you are.
I can see that. You radiate that energy.
Thank you.
And what were the key success factors throughout your career?
So I think there are quite a few of them. So one thing that I think we haven't really touched upon yet is nothing beats hard work. It's the pushing hard, even when it's painful. It's showing up, and it's showing up consistently, right? It's there is no way to compensate for that. And even now, where I also have my safe corporate job, when I close the laptop, this is usually, or oftentimes not when I stop working. It means that then I do my other things. It means that, for example, I'm sitting there preparing for a talk like that, or for a keynote, or that I go to an event to network. And you cannot compensate that. Like, all the talent in the world cannot compensate if beat someone who's just putting in the sheer amount of work. So I think it's just also about work ethic to a certain extent. But the work ethic, I think, also happens when you feel the purpose, right? Because I know why I'm doing that, and I want to do that. So for me, also all of these things, I want to do them, I enjoy them. So that makes it a bit easier. The other thing, and we've touched about on that earlier, it's about having the right people in your life. It's about building the right alliances, finding people who are aligned with you, who give you guidance, who have the same interests, who want to collaborate with you, who give you energy. It's also about just being proactive. As I said, things don't fall into your lap. things happen because you did something before. And then you get to create an upward spiral. Like one thing leads to the next, leads to the next, leads to the next. If you're in a downward spiral, that sucks a bit because it's just going down. But if you're in an upward spiral, that is really, really amazing. It's also for me figuring out what my values were, and then making sure that I am in line with my values, because then if you know who you are and who you want to be. You can be much like you come from a point of authenticity, right? Because then you go out there and you are who you are, and you're not scared to show that, and that means you get to build completely different relationships, because then you can really connect with people, and that also helps with figuring out who the right people for you are.
Yeah. And who has taught you work ethic? Because I think it's one characteristic that I don't want to say is missing, but it's lacking kind of bit at the younger generations right now.
I wouldn't want to judge everyone in the younger generation, but yes, I see that happening more and more as well, that people do not want to work full time anymore. I would look, if you have a reason why you don't want to work or if you can't work full time, okay, I get that. If you have kids, for example, you may not be able to work a full-time job or something like that. But what we need to ask ourselves is, now we all want to have a proper pension. We all want to have a big social safety net. We all want to have full healthcare. Who is going to pay for that? Who is going to pay for that if you're only working part-time, because then your contributions are lower, but you still want to have the full service? This is not going to work. And in the end, my parents always told me that privilege bears responsibility. And I think this is very, very important. If you are privileged, you have a responsibility. And here it is a responsibility of all capable people to contribute to our society and to contribute to our welfare system, etc., etc. And yes, I also agree. I mean, you see that it's becoming a bit more individualistic, but I mean, seriously, we need some sort of societal cohesion. Otherwise, it's just going to break apart, and that is not good. And if you ask me where I got the work ethic from, I mean, I come from Vorarlberg, where we have this Schaffer Hüslebauer mentality. No, but it comes very much from my parents, whom I've seen working countless hours. Also, my dad, I think, always worked weekends. So I think this is just ingrained in how I grew up, and it's a useful thing,
I agree. Because you have to work for it. It's the truth.
Yeah, and how are you going to develop if you just sit? As I said, nothing comes to you when you sit at home doing nothing, right? So there you go.
That's what I loved at our university, that we had actually the possibilities to also work on real life projects. And I mean, my startup has come out of a course that was called Garage, and we had like 6 months time to build a startup that's somehow working. It was like a 30-40 hours job per each person, and you only got like 40 CTS out of it. So, and you tell it to other students from other universities, like, why the hell would you do that? It's like, because the learning curve was so high. I learned so much about myself, how to pitch myself, present myself, how to build finances and experience. And I love it when you combine theoretical experience with practical experience.
Yes. Same for me. I mean, this is also why I didn't want to do a PhD after my master's, because it's like I need to get my hands dirty. Now in investment banking, you don't exactly get your hands dirty, which is also why I very much love being in the industry now. But yeah, it is really about experience and accumulating experience. And for me, while I was on the journey, for example, I specifically decided that I would be maximizing for for experience, for different experiences, for adventure. Basically, that was a conscious decision because I was like, okay, I think it was 28 or 29, something like that. I don't have kids right now, so nothing can happen. Worst case, I'll get myself a job again. But I have this opportunity now to basically explore and discover myself. I didn't think it would be that adventurous, but but I was very consistent in choosing the more adventurous path, I would say, and maybe this is also something that our listeners may want to think about. Like, is there anything you want to maximize for? It's perfectly fine if you say, hey, I just want to earn a lot of money, so I'm going to maximize for that. It's also fine to say, okay, well, I want more adventure. Like, just play a little bit with that and figure out what it is that you want. I mean, for me, I have to say, there is a fine line between being adventurous and being stupid. So, so I mean, if I had to do it again now, I would probably weave the concept of risk a bit more into my mental model, because I have a very big affinity for risk, and in my mental model, risk wasn't really, I don't know, it was not really in there.
You just don't see it.
No, you don't, you're like, ooh, there is an opportunity. Yeah. Ooh, I need to take that one. But yeah, a friend of mine once said, be consistently not stupid. And I think this is actually a good advice to go by.
Yeah, I like it, yeah. I remember one time we went on hiking and we had like no equipment, and we nearly made it to the top, and there was like one last peak to the summit, which was you have to climb. So there are rocks and like a rope that you can use it, but you have no like security. And I went there with a friend of mine, and she and I never had like we never were afraid of heights. And then we were like looking down like hundreds meters down. It's like, why are our legs shaking? And we just sat there for like 10 minutes, and then little children, around 9-year-old, came back down, also without any security. I was like, okay, if they can do it, we can do it as well. And honestly, if you get on top, you just feel like you're on the top of the world, because you have all those hills under you. But looking back at the photographs, it's like, you're going down as like literally 200 meters down the free fall. If you slip, it's over. So
it feels a bit like an entrepreneurship journey, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. We talked a lot about the past and what your journey has been like. And if people will look back at your journey in 10 years, what do you hope they will say about you? So how do your next 10 years?
Well, I hope it will be 50 years. I mean, if you look at the world, there is so much to do. Like, so much more improvements to be made. So maybe not 50, maybe 60 or 70. But then I'm done. I really hope that people will say about me that I uplifted them, that I inspired them to follow their heart, to go on their journey. That I took the time to listen and to ask the right questions, and to maybe give some pointers on how they could find their way. And I think if I manage to do that with a couple of people, then I have really accomplished something. But just the mental image that I generally have in my mind is, and I use it a lot with my team as well, is that we're like a field of flowers in spring. We're all very different, but we're all beautiful, and we all grow together. And this is really the goal here.
Beautiful. I think that sums up our beautiful conversation. So thank you very much again for your time today and sharing your perspective and your journey with us. I think many of our listeners will benefit a lot from your perspective. So thank you very much, and
thank you.
See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.